and I believe that we should be live. Welcome back to Temple of the Cynic. I'm your host with the most, Nick, and I have a very special guest with me today.
Hi, I'm Maddie. Never done this before, so we'll see how this goes. Hopefully, I don't fuck it all up.
It should be pretty fun. I don't think it's too high maintenance for what we're trying to accomplish here. So today we're gonna
My brain capacity might make it through, but we'll see how those cells hold up.
I mean, I've done this sort of thing for a long time.
That makes a lot of sense.
Some of the viewers out there know I used to run a podcast for quite some time. Now I'm running this one. So started from the bottom once again. So now we're here at the bottom.
Okay, well that was an almost Drake reference. Good job there, bud.
Yeah.
Proud of you for that one.
Did a pretty good job.
You almost did.
All right, so today we're going to get into the Amityville horror, and there's a lot of really interesting aspects to this specific study in not only the supernatural, but also a bit of true crime, and that's where we're definitely going to start off, because that's the actual story.
Well,
we'll get into that later. But
all right, so basically this all started, and it's like a super famous thing. They've made just an ungodly amount of movies about it.
Yeah.
But it starts with Ronald Joseph DeFeo. They called him Big Ronnie, and Luis Brigante.
See, you're not saying it right though. It's Big Ronnie. Hey,
I'm
Big
not
Ronnie.
saying it like that though.
That's how you say that right there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, you go ahead. You can fill in for me.
Okay.
The couple met in the 1940s and they got married. And as per usual, Luis's parents were like, "Hey, Big Ronnie sucks, dude."
Forget about it. Come on.
And they were like, "We're not gonna talk to you because you married this guy, and they call him Big Ronnie." I don't know. He just wasn't that cool, I guess.
I don't understand how a man named Big Ronnie would make a poor impression to somebody's parents.
I don't either.
It's pretty nonsensical at this point, but
it happens. So they stopped talking to their daughter until September of 1951, when Ronald Joseph DeFeo Jr., or Butch, was born. Kind of had a rough childhood. He was the oldest son, so he was held to some pretty high standards, and Big Ronnie was not afraid to hurt the children. We'll learn later and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, Big Ronnie was like one of those really sweaty dudes from Queens who was just like, he would literally basically set it out to where it's like, it's okay if you just like beat your family as long as you just throw money at them after the fact.
I mean, I guess that works.
He'd be like, I know we've been through a lot of tough times. Take $50 about it. And then just send them off.
Listen, if that's how my life would have been handled, I would probably, I don't know, eat more chicken nuggets or something.
Eat more chicken nuggets. Okay.
It's the only standards I have for my life. So he wasn't an only child for long, because 5 years later, in the summer of 1956, the DeFeos had their first daughter, Dawn. After Dawn was Allison in 1961, and then Mark in 62. So they're just pumping them out, They have nothing better to do. They're just flinging kids. Big Ronnie was super abusive, again, to Louise and the children, so Louise left him shortly after the birth of Mark. To try and win Louise back, Big Ronnie co-wrote music, and he was like, "Here, I'll have this big jazz great Joe Williams perform a song that I co-wrote, and I'll put it on the album, and you'll love me again."
and then it fucking works.
Yeah.
That's
I guess
the best
this
part
shit
too.
worked
Like,
for some reason.
If you listen to it, you can pull it up. It's like, I can't remember the exact song title.
No,
it doesn't really mention it in any of our research,
No.
but it's mediocre at best. Like, you can best describe it as like, this is what Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin passed up on, so it got picked up by a different person. It doesn't even really sound like jazz. It's definitely that kind of like late 40s, early 50s, like really, really white kind of jazz, if you can call it that. It's not that special. It's really just, like...
Oh, you're telling me something not that special came from a guy named Big Ronnie?
Yeah, forget about it.
Yeah, I would like to. I would like to forget that you co-wrote music.
But yeah, I love that it worked, honestly, because it's like, oh, Ronnie, I know that you always hit me and the children, but you really took it up when you got that Joe Williams to do that song, and then...
I hate that works.
Worked.
It works now, too, with the fucking SoundCloud rappers. People are just like, he wrote a SoundCloud rap about me, and they have 3 of his children.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, sure.
I feel very sorry for whoever has to, like, sleep with, when he was still kicking XX Temptation. How do you even say that name?
I just call it X.
X, yeah.
He had good music, though. Like, he
had
just
some
sad.
pretty interesting music.
Yeah.
He did a rap over a Slipknot song, and that, to me, is pretty fucking hilarious.
You're also the guy who listens to the Fruit Salad remix.
That's art, because it's the Wiggles counter-imposed with Slipknot. And that's very important, but we'll get into it later.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. So he wrote this fucking song, and it worked. And in 1965, they had another son, John Matthew.
Like a traditional Queen's piece of shit.
Of course.
Just, oh, hey, I know that we already have at least 5 kids, but why not another? And
I
it's
wrote this song, we're gonna bang, and I'm gonna push out another child. Well, I guess.
And you can't... Yeah. And they're actually a Brooklyn family, aren't they?
I think so.
Yeah, they are at Brooklyn.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
okay, my bad. Yeah. I'm sorry to disparage the great neighborhood.
You're ruining my rhythm. You've thrown me off my rhythm.
I forgot about it.
Oh my god. Yeah. So after John Matthew, I was getting to the apartment. The family outgrew their Brooklyn apartment. Shockingly enough, could you believe it? All of these fucking toddlers, and they're like, maybe we need a house. So they go and get a house at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York.
Well, I tell you what you do instead, okay? Listen, hear me out.
Hear me out.
You get those big metal tins and act like your kids are sardines, and you just stack them on top of each other. Like, no bunk beds required at all. You just, like, metal can. Put a little bit of, like, lay it down with a blanket and a pillow. You're fine.
Covers.
That's all you gotta do.
Some hot sauce,
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I put my children
That's
to bed.
the way to do it.
That's how I put my kids to bed.
Yeah, so they moved to upstate New York, which is somehow infinitely worse than Brooklyn. So that's pretty awesome.
But it had a house.
Yeah, that's true. But that's typical New York City trash, doing that kind of thing where it's like, oh, hey, we got a big house now. It's in upstate New York. We're really making it places. And it's like, you're really not. It's still, like, really crappy. But to be fair, Amityville, very classy, quote-unquote, for upstate New York.
Yeah.
It's not Buffalo. So, that's
true.
I'm gonna have a lot of New Yorkers be like, you son of a bitch. First you get it wrong with Queens, and then you get it wrong with fucking Amityville, alright?
Yeah.
And yes, at least it's not Buffalo. I'm from Buffalo. Please don't come here.
For real. I feel that. Okay. So, a little bit about it, I guess, about what happened. On the afternoon of November 13th in 1974, it was just kind of a normal day, not much was going on, and there was a bar on the corner of Merrick Road and Ocean Avenue called Henry's Bar. So, evening comes, normal day, nothing's happening. At about 6:30, I call him Bush. Sorry. You seen the guy, it makes sense. Butch comes running into Henry's.
It doesn't look like a bush to me.
I mean, he needs a haircut. That's all I'm saying. I guess that was the thing back then.
Oh.
It was like, they're all just
you're
like
talking about that
hippie
kind
men.
of thing. You talking?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Fucked up, okay. So Butch comes running in. He's like freaking out. And he's like, oh my god, my parents are dead. My parents have been shot. So his best friend, Robert, I really don't know. Kelsky? Sure.
Yeah,
Bobby.
Kelsky.
We're going to call him Bobby.
His name is freaking Bobby. Bobby Kelsky. That's how you say it. Kelsky.
Uncultured. Leave me be.
And I love that there's so many, just Ronnies, Bobbies, and this Butch.
Butch.
You can tell
Butch,
this is not exactly the most fun place to be. It's just a lot of sweaty Italians in tracksuits. And, that's what it is. That's how it's got to be. But at the same time, not exactly the best place. And we're about to find out why.
I mean,
For sure.
But they probably did a lot of good business there. Anyway.
Yeah.
So Bobby goes over to Butch, who's freaking out, crying, on his knees on the floor, why? And he's like, dude, the fuck, bro? And Butch is like, please help me, I need your help. And they convinced a bunch of people to follow Butch back home. And, they got in the car and took off way faster than they should have.
And I love all of the names of these people. You got John Altieri, Joey Yesawat, Al Sexton, William Scrum. I can't even say it.
Scormaglia?
Yeah.
There we go. And also, I just as an
Scormaglia.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scormaglia.
Just
That's
as an
an awesome
aside,
name.
every time he does this accent, he does this under the table.
You gotta do the hands.
And I don't even know how to feel about it.
You gotta do the hands.
It throws me off because I keep looking over there because I keep seeing your hands, and I'm like, quit doing the hands.
All Italians talk with their hands too. You'll notice, usually when I talk, unless I'm just zoned out, I'm doing the hand shit.
It's true, but you're always with the names, and I'm like,
the hands.
It's a spicy meatball.
All right. Well, they piled into a Buick Electra, and then what happened from there?
So they piled into this Buick, right? Which Buicks are pretty nice. If you've ever been in one, they're pretty decent.
Relatable.
So they're no Cadillac, but they'll do. Butch climbed in the back, and Bobby took the wheel, and he hauled ass. He was like, all right, shit, something happened. We flying. And he gets to the house. It's about a block away, and there were six of those other people. When they arrived at the house, they discovered a brutal crime scene in which all 6 members of Butch's family were found shot and lying in their beds face down.
Yeah, and that's really, really weird. All of them look like they had been shot in their sleep, just lying completely face down, belly on the bed, everything.
And we'll get into why that's a problem.
Yeah. So they're all shot in the back as well. So.
Yeah, which is also really weird. But Butch was pretty much just like, I didn't do this, I'm not responsible. The house was broken into. There was a mob hitman who had a direct history with Big Ronnie. The mob had ties with the DeFeos, so that wasn't exactly something that was like, well, he's lying.
Taken completely lightly, yeah. Because when he went and talked to the cops initially, they were like, all right, Butch, the fuck's going on over here?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, well, I
Dad.
just found all of my parents were murdered.
Yeah.
And then I went in and I saw all of my siblings just magically murdered. I was out playing, pickup sticks at the time. And he just, like, had, like, a really crappy alibi where he just, like, wasn't present for whatever reason. They later find out, like, the murders took place about, like, 1 a.m.-ish. So, yeah.
I thought it was at 3. Weird.
Get into that later,
I know. I don't know much about what's going on. I only know, like, the beginning. But, so, basically, they were like, alright, this dude's kind of sketchy. Because, Butch was, like, telling all this stuff. He was like, I didn't do it. It was a
playing
hitman.
pickup sticks.
Yeah. It's like some
Pick up
hitman
sticks with the
did
boys.
it. But the hitman that he accused was like, nah, dude, I was at home. I was probably banging my wife or something. I don't know what the dude was doing. But, good for him, whatever it was.
Yeah. I
fucking his wife, I don't know.
I think that the hitman was like, yeah, I was taking care of some yard trimmings back outside of the docks.
And they just took that. They were like,
all right, well,
that's cool. That counts as an alibi.
Yeah, I'm just
that
not
counts.
gonna fuck with that. No, he was completely out of town.
Was he? Okay.
I don't know if he was out of state, but he was definitely far enough away that it was like...
Could have been banging his wife.
I don't think so. I don't think the hitmen are allowed to have wives,
Are they not?
they?
I hope they are. That'd be kind of cool. I would marry a hitman immediately.
Good to know.
Like, first Tinder date, dude's like, I'm a hitman, and I'm like,
hey,
let's
listen,
go.
Hold on. I gotta take care of some things in this trash compactor.
Yeah.
So,
Trash
give me just a
compactors are
couple
cool.
of minutes to unload the trunk.
Yeah.
And then it's just...
Wedding.
Wedding?
Yeah.
Okay. Wedding time.
For sure. That's how it works.
Good to know.
So he claimed that this hitman, who was out of town apparently, forced him to watch as he killed his family, but eventually DeFeo caved and he admitted that he murdered his family. The DeFeo household had been kind of crazy during the evening of November 12th of 1974.
Yeah, day before the murder, essentially. Like,
so shit hit the fan.
Fever pitch. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, if anybody has a family, you understand.
Yeah, so...
Sorry to those
basically,
who don't.
like some kind of huge fight took place, which was not, like, out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
But that day, Butch's father, Big Ronnie, Big Ronnie decided to really take it up a notch and was just, hitting people left and right. So after that, they basically went down, him and Dawn.
Yeah.
And this will come into pretty heavy play later, that relationship between him and Dawn will. Because they went down into the basement and they got, like, super, super high and fucked up. And they watched, like, some kind of goofy horror movie.
Love
which
that. I feel that.
People later claim, though, like, oh, it's because of this scary horror movie that the demons were allowed to talk to him from the house. And that's why he did the murder. And it's... that shit's just silly, honestly.
So at like 1 a.m., as he said earlier, on November 13th, the gruesome crime was committed. 2 shots to both of the parents and 1 for each of the siblings. So he was like really trying to get rid of his parents, I guess. Trial was set quickly after the confession, and a psychiatrist diagnosed Butch with antisocial personality disorder and the history of drug abuse that he had in his early teen years. It was brought up in the trial, which ended around Thanksgiving, with Butch getting a sentence of 25 to life for each of the murders. And that's like a really quick kind of trial.
No, it did not take
That
them
was,
long at all,
like,
because he
10
caught to
days.
everything, and
Yeah.
not only that, they, like, when they say, like, history of drug abuse, they mean, like, this dude was,
He did,
like, constantly
yeah.
doing fucking heroin
Yeah.
and
He
acid,
did, like, big stuff.
just, like, left and right, especially
Yeah.
because, like we talked about earlier, like, with Big Ronnie, he would just throw fucking money
Yeah.
at the kids. He, like, gave them all allowances.
Yeah.
Paid for whatever his wife really felt like she needed, you know.
Yeah.
Like, because Ronnie, we'll get to know, is, like, definitely involved, at least to some degree, with the mob, because...
As an Italian man, if you're fucking right.
Well, not even necessarily that.
Birthright.
It's because of the fact that his dad, like Big Ronnie's dad, big time mobster, like big time. So even if he wasn't like directly in it, you know, he was definitely like associated by.
Grandpa's gonna bring down a body. Just don't look at him.
Yeah, exactly.
Grandpa's bringing in some trash bags. Don't look at him when he walks through the living room.
Yeah. So like, you know, Big Ronnie just had that kind of money to throw around, and so like, you know, Butch being as like fucked up and unstable as he was just like, I'm gonna spend it all on drugs, like, as soon as I can. And then
there's always fun.
Yeah, and he basically like was constantly showing signs that he was gonna have a violent outburst at some point.
Yeah.
But the story kind of gets in a little bit deeper. It actually has a little bit more substance to it than what lies on the surface, because initially Butch just takes the fall. Like, and what's really weird about it too is that his grandfather, Big Ronnie's dad, actually comes and visits him in jail after the murders take place, and after it's like, you know, basically all this happened and they're putting you in jail because you already copped to it. And he's like, listen, don't talk nothing about nobody, especially the rest of the family. I know that you and Don have a weird thing going on, so don't even fucking try to mention it. Don't dirty the name of anybody. Don't do nothing.
What?
And so that's where,
what's
like,
going on with Don?
So it's kind of gets into like the conspiracy side of it, because there really is a conspiracy side of what goes on with these murders, because you got to think about it. This is a 3-story building.
Right.
All of them found shots to the back, face down on the bed.
Yeah.
And supposedly not a single one of them gets up when they hear the first shots going on. It's just, magically somehow it's supposed to be blocked out by the ghosts or the demons haunting the house. But if we want to be honest, that's probably not what happened.
Right.
Everything about this crime scene looks like it has the involvement of definitely more than one person.
It's weird, yeah.
And so we have a pretty good source on this subject from a specific book, which was written in, I believe, 2000. It's called The Night the DeFeos Died. Butch basically says that, you know, hey, I wasn't the only one. Like, how do you think that I could have pulled that off? I would have had to shoot both of the parents, have all my siblings stay in one little room, not do anything, not even wake up or do anything, just stay asleep.
Right.
And then go down there and shoot all of them by myself too. And then, you know, somehow make it more elaborate for myself.
Right. And like, during our research, one thing that I had read before was, I already forgot what it was, but it was like the type of gun. Yeah. And immediately when they said it, I was like, oh shit, because I've heard
a rifle.
those. Well, yeah. But it's like it's one that shakes the house. Like, you shoot something in the backyard and the house shakes. And it's like, that's not something that you sleep through.
Yeah.
No. I don't care, like, what you're doing. You're not sleeping through that.
And you could easily say too, like, okay, well, maybe they were awake, but they were just like panicked and just like frozen, and that can happen sometimes, but it's much more likely that there were more people involved.
Right.
And that's where we get into this. So, according to Butch, again, in prison, and this is about November 30th, 2000, he said that, hey, it was a cold-blooded murder, period. No ghosts, no demons, just 3 people in which I was one. And so that clues us into, hey, there's like a bigger conspiracy going down here. There's definitely more people involved.
Yeah.
So what he claims is that basically him and Dawn, after going down to the basement and getting all fucked up, they were like, hey, we're finally going to do this. We're finally going to kill Big Ronnie. We're finally going to be done with all of this.
Yeah.
And that's how it was at first. It was just supposed to be get rid of Big Ronnie because he was the big problem, really. And as a matter of fact, according to Butch, he had like a perfectly fine relationship with his mother.
Right.
And so he didn't really want to kill his mother, but we definitely know that he did. He totally confessed to doing that. He definitely shot the 2 of them twice to make sure that that went down smoothly. But he claims that while that was going on, downstairs, Dawn was handling the other siblings. And he didn't know about that initially.
Oh.
Her and one of their friends were basically just killing the kids at the same time, or roughly the same time. So that way there was less commotion. They wouldn't try to run or anything. You're just taking them out. And so...
Yeah, so that happened. But what happened to Dawn? Because she died too.
Yeah, she did. So
she was part of it, and he shot her anyway.
Yeah, so basically... The original plan called for the kids to be taken to their grandparents, but according to Butch, Dawn killed them to eliminate them as witnesses, and Butch claimed he wasn't, exactly aware of that at the time. He tried to, basically flee and then get, the guy that was with them initially to help clean up.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he comes back, it's like, oh, shit, this bitch done killed all of our siblings. That's totally against what we wanted to do. And with that, he's like, all right, that's enough. I'm not dealing with this, and decides to go ahead and take Dawn out as well.
So they all laid in bed the same way. And he comes in and finds out that Dawn killed the kids. So he's like, okay, lay down in bed on your stomach and I'm gonna shoot you in the back.
Yeah, basically.
That's weird, but okay.
So it says here, so after briefly trying to wrestle for the gun, once he goes back and finds that Dawn murdered them, Butch got the upper hand, slammed Dawn against the bed, knocking her out, and as she lied unconscious, Butch placed the back of the rifle to Dawn's head and fired when he got her on the bed.
Mm.
So, then you have the issue of Klima, but...
All I'm saying is I've been slammed on a bed several times in my life and I've never passed out from it. But okay.
I don't know.
It's weird, but okay. I'll take your word for it.
It's pretty cool. It's just one of the many conspiracies. That's the one that seems to garner the most attention. And there's...
It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
There's further forensic evidence for it, but I didn't want to go into too much detail just for the sake of not making this, 3 hours of combing over needless crap, which is just a lot. Yeah. But, I mean, the evidence does support claims that more than one gun and killer were involved in the DeFeo murders. Yeah. As a roundabout way of saying it. Basically, although several attempts were made to contact one of the accomplices, also named by Butch, it was rumored that they basically went into witness protection, so they couldn't reach out to that person. Dawn's clearly dead, so you can't really get their side of the story on it.
Right.
And then another supposed accomplice that might have been involved in some way, shape, or form. The accomplice part of the story isn't exactly clear. It's more just, hey, definitely Dawn was involved and definitely I was. And then we had like one or two people helping out with that. He tends to kind of change the story, is what I'm also saying. I think that this is closer to the truth, but you can't really trust him either way too much.
Yeah.
All right, but here is some of the more concrete evidence that I thought was interesting too. As for Dawn, the post-mortem examination discovered that she had unburned powder burns on her nightgown, which led to further credence to Butch's claims of his sister's involvement. So basically, when she was using a firearm, it left that forensic evidence that she was using the firearm, not that it was just used against her. So, there is some substantial evidence that helps kind of support the story, but again, can't really trust him too much. Not the most trustworthy person. They seem to kind of switch up a couple of details here and there, but I think that's about as close to the truth as we're going to get.
Probably.
Now, there is another conspiracy that we can get into too real briefly, which is that it was definitely completely mob involved. Kind of similar to what he claimed initially, right? Where he was like, oh, it was definitely this hitman. Probably wasn't that hitman, but it probably was somebody associated with the mob, and Big Ronnie had just taken it a step too far with some dealings that were going on. And so basically...
But could it have been Big Ronnie, or could it have been his dad? Because a lot of times they go after the family.
Well, yeah. So,
and then they left a bunch, and they were like, here,
yeah.
I didn't.
So either way, like, you have a pretty strong case of this could definitely be mob involvement just because of how the DeFeos kind of were entangled in it because of Big Ronnie's dad. Yeah. So... With that said, they said that basically, or I should say that Butch said basically that, hey, I was like, there was a demon that talked to me and he was cloaked in a hooded mask and all of this stuff. And, he's the one that handed me the gun. Now, the demon part is clearly bullshit, but what we can say for sure is that, at least according to one eyewitness, quote unquote, of the scene, he said that he was staking out the house as part of his investigation for the mob. And he says that he did see somebody who was cloaked go up into the house with some firearms.
But that could have just been Butch, who was like trying to
or
hide.
It could have been one of his accomplices, like we talked about earlier. So... Some say it could be mob involvement. I don't put nearly as much stock in that one. Because at the end of the day, it's really just kind of like... I think that the whole, hey, we're getting all fucked up in the basement. Let's finally get rid of them because we hate this motherfucker part of the story sounds a bit more likely.
Yeah. I don't know. It's all just kind of weird. It's
Either
just a
way,
weird situation.
Yeah, either way, super brutal, super intense for a story, for sure. And that's why it would be so famous later on as one of the most haunted places in America.
Movies.
Yeah, a lot of movies. They just made a new one too in like 2019. They were like,
and that one's about
that
Butch,
one's
isn't
the
it?
True crime aspect mainly. So
I thought that was the paranormal because it had like the ones. It was like we watched the trailer and it was like the demon stuff.
But it is
it
is Butch. It's the story of Butch, but they're taking it from the paranormal stance, which I'll air my grievances on that here in a second.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
But yeah, so for the paranormal side, now the house had remained vacant for about 13 months after the murders, but on December 1975, George and Kathleen Lutz purchased property for the bargain price of only $80,000. And Considering the property, it's Dutch colonial.
It's a
3
nice house.
stories.
Yeah.
It looks creepy as all hell. Like, as you can see on our stream video, like, that's the Amityville horror house.
But I mean, it's a nice house.
Yeah.
Like, it's not run down or anything. Like, for $80,000, that's a nice house.
Especially in that neighborhood, which was, like, historically very nice.
Yeah.
Now it's not as...
I mean, yeah.
Great. Property value tends to decline.
A little bit.
The more bodies you start stacking, you know.
Yeah. The more times people have, police show up.
Yeah.
It's kind of like...
It's not as fun. So, hearing about the house's gruesome past didn't really deter the Lutz family. Because that was... Yeah, because they're crazy white people. And that's a fucking steal on some property value.
No
shit. That's not really too bad at all.
Yeah.
So... The couple quickly moved in with their 3 children and, just as quickly, moved out again within the span of only 28 days. They didn't even stay a full fucking month.
I mean, yeah.
That's how supposedly bad it was that they just couldn't stay there.
I don't know.
Which is...
Suck it up. But this was like the 70s, so people were scared of everything. They were like, oh, the wind blew, it's a ghost. Now I'm pretty sure this apartment's haunted and I just live with it.
Yeah,
I'm trying to bond with your demons.
I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. I think if it were haunted, I would have more to say about it, and I would have done a whole stream about it at this point.
Your apartment?
Yeah.
You don't hear that stuff?
Hear what stuff?
You're usually asleep or something.
Like what?
Your house is just creepy. I don't know.
I know stuff will just
dark,
adjust and weird. Settle and
I don't know.
move sometimes.
My house is weird too, though.
I think that's just because it's not the best apartment.
My house.
Okay.
I hear footsteps. You've heard them, haven't you?
No.
Oh my gosh. I do. I hear them all the time.
Maybe I'm just not tuned in. I don't know.
Maybe.
But yeah, so it took them less than a month, 28 freaking days, until they were like, we're tired of it, this is too much. And the really amazing thing is that they left with basically all their possessions just still in the house. That part of the story is absolutely true.
And that's so weird.
Yeah, and that kind of makes me think something had to have been going on, something pretty severe enough.
Yeah.
Even though there was definitely some embellishing going on. But we can get into the paranormal claims that they had now. So, since the family had moved in, they knew the background of the house and everything. They were like, okay, before we move in, we definitely want to have this priest that we know come and exorcise the house.
Because that's always a good idea.
Yeah.
That's not even sarcastic. That's kind of a good idea. If there's spooky shit, be like, hey, bro.
So you have this dude who's just like, okay, what do? I go to the house and then I bless every room. Don't worry about it. And then he starts going through all the different rooms and he's like, bless that, bless that, bless that. And
is that how that works?
Yeah. You just go into, you just
bless
okay,
you.
Blessed it. Blessed it. I know my Catholicism pretty well. I'd like to think.
I'd like to keep it that way.
So yeah, he goes into every room and blesses it. And he notices one room in particular though that really, really messes with him. And basically, to the chagrin of the Lutzes, this was supposedly futile, as the priest had decided that he'd heard some sort of really pronounced, just wispy, low voice just go, "Get out," as he entered the room. I mean...
Could it have been just a normal guy? Could it have been Nick? It could have.
I don't think so. I don't think it was me. That would have been really funny.
You time traveling.
Yeah, I would totally do that shit too. Just to be like, yeah, I was there.
I did it.
The world may never know. I can't reveal my secrets, alright, on stream. Maybe after.
Yeah,
All
we'll
right.
talk about it later. We'll get into that in a minute.
So he's like, he literally comes back to them and he's like, not only did I hear that voice, just wherever you end up sleeping, not that room. Don't go in that room.
Don't do that. It's better.
They're like, so you hear like a demon and your one reaction is, hey, just don't fucking go in that room. Don't sleep there. Like, you can put stuff in there. That's fine. Don't sleep there.
Put
like,
fucking antiques and your old picture frames and shit in there, but like,
By
don't
all
put your
means.
fucking
Yeah.
child or anything.
Yeah, don't do
I
that.
put a child in there just because I wanted to see.
so that's super fun.
It's just a bad parent.
I guess so. During their short time in the house, the family claims sightings of a bunch of different crazy ass shit, right?
Yeah.
Just mysterious hoof prints in the snow around their home. They had glowing red demon eyes, and the cool part about that is usually the glowing red demon eyes were attached to a big old pig. It's
I'm
just
gonna
a
hold
demon
back
pig.
from what I would normally say. We're just gonna let it go for a minute.
They had, according to
Exactly
George, they also had slime oozing from the walls, and they had a crucifix being flipped around right in front of their eyes, which was super fun.
And wasn't like after it flipped, they were like, "This smells bad." It like had a smell to it.
Yeah, it was like supposed to have like the scent of death.
Could that have been the slime? I mean,
pretty sure the slime part's fake, but we'll get to that.
No.
Much more
Sometimes
subtle
slime
occurrences were also being noticed around the house. Basically,
How?
yeah.
Welcome to the South.
Such as George waking up routinely at 3:15 a.m. Like 3:15 a.m. like clockwork, just up every single night. And this is a person who had never really struggled with insomnia or anything like that before.
Right.
He's just kept waking up at this time. Random cold spots throughout the house, and an incredibly abnormal amount of flies in the house. That part was definitely over-embellished by the movie, but also pretty much confirmed that part was true.
Yeah, I mean,
to
flies
real
are
life.
annoying, and like when you get a few, it feels like you have a bunch.
Yeah, like
So maybe they were
many.
like, we have so many, and there were like 30.
Well, yeah, and there were plenty of them. I mean, like, but
Just put
it
out
also
some little sticky
it also
spiral
yeah
traps.
it
It's
also kind of goes into the fact that, hey man, you're just kind of leaving food out everywhere and not taking care of your house, and it's like cold right now. So,
but if it was cold, probably that wouldn't be like.
yeah, so it was abnormally high
situation.
for the time of year and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, from there, on top of the cold spots, like the cold spots could be felt by pretty much everyone, but George particularly was just obsessed with how cold it was in this house. Like, it was always too cold, so he started obsessively chopping firewood over and over and over, and that part is true. Like, he would just go out into the yard, just keep chopping more and more wood for the fireplace for the living room, and he would keep that fire roaring just constantly. So that was pretty interesting to me. I mean, I guess, like, maybe he was just having a rough time because it was too much adjustment for him or something, but
maybe he was sick. I don't know.
yeah, well, he definitely started, like, he just started looking like shit. Like, every single day when he would get out of the house, more and more people would notice. They'd be like, hey, George.
Dude, the fuck?
Wake up on the wrong side of the fucking floor today, buddy? And he's just like, I hate this house. It's always so cold. Why is it always so cold? And the flies.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, George, you good talking to you.
I'll see you later.
We'll consider this, we'll put a pin in it. How about that?
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Come back to that later. Yeah.
That's going to be my new thing. We'll talk
Put
about
a pin in that. Yeah. That would be great.
Yeah.
So, top of that, so towards the very end, once it starts really ramping up, that's when you start seeing the stuff like, oh, there's the hoof prints and the glowing eyes and slime and the crucifix, and then way later into it, and these ones are definitely the more dubious claims as far as pretty much all of the actual research is concerned.
Yeah.
And they're far more terrifying too, but
Right.
basically Kathleen, George's wife, and their two sons were found levitating in their beds until woken up, like the movie Poltergeist. Like
That's
they were
weird.
just straight lifted off of the
That's
bed.
weird.
And that's a lot. I mean, and you had other poltergeist activity throughout the entire house too.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, they said knives in the kitchen. They said that the front door was blasted off of its handle.
Yeah.
They said that windows, especially a certain window in the house, would just open, just like thwip open.
Opening my
super
window.
fast. Like,
It is cold.
yeah, so
It is winter.
it would just open, close, open, close, open, close.
Yeah.
Over and over again, and that was really bizarre. So they had like a lot of weird poltergeist activity. There was also something with, basically they had a Chinese lion statue in the living room.
Yeah.
And one night when George
always
is
fun.
like up at like 3:15 again, he like walks into the living room and he trips over the lion statue, and then when he looks down at his leg in the morning, or later in the morning I should say, he notices that there's like a huge bite mark with like 4 teeth marks in his leg from
But-
where he tripped. So
That could have just been like the dog or something. Like,
It-
what if he
well, the
tripped
dog-
over the dog?
the dog definitely didn't bite him. They know that, but they think that it was just probably some kind of unrelated injury at some point.
The flies got him.
The flies got him, yeah,
Ever seen those
I guess.
butterfly things? They're gross. I don't like that.
And the most infamous of all, and that's my favorite one, is there's supposed to be, and apparently Kathleen saw it one time, and then George saw it later with one of their sons. A giant monster pig with just these huge glowing red eyes, and you stop that.
Me?
And
That's what I want to be when I grow up.
that's what you want to be when you grow up?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I'm already halfway there.
It manifested in like one of the top story windows.
Yeah,
though.
I
It
just
was
want to
this-
manifest places.
This giant pig.
It's the only thing I'm missing is I don't
Monstrous
manifest
eyes.
randomly.
Yeah. And like,
Other than that, I have it down.
okay.
I'm excited.
So,
I'm learning.
so this, for them, all of this activity hitting back to back to back, this was the final straw. This forced them to leave everything behind completely and leave the state of New York entirely. Don't blame you there.
No.
And had them and many others wondering if what occurred in the house the previous year was truly all the work of Butch, or if it could be something far more sinister that drove them to commit those awful and tragic murders. So maybe the haunted house was haunted all along. There was some kind of weird occult origin to it. But more than likely, with all the research that I've done, probably not.
Right.
If anything, I think that a lot of the phenomena was actually mainly spurred on by, you know, if any sort of ghost activity is going on in that house, probably those murders. There was, like Butch himself said, there was no demons or monsters or little green ghouls running around telling him to do that crazy shit. Definitely selfish motivation with an antisocial personality type being given weapons and access to those weapons very readily. And on top of that, a lot of the claims that, George and Kathleen have made about the house and what went on in there were pretty much either debunked or outright just refuted by admittance of their own. Like, for instance, where they were like, when the new family moved in, right, after them, because somebody actually went ahead and they were like, well, I don't know about all that. It sounds like that's a lot of,
Sounds
hoopla.
like... Mm-hmm.
Hoopla's the nice term.
Sounds
Complete
like
bullshit.
some shit.
Yeah, so...
I'm gonna move in and do white people shit and see what happens.
Well, they moved in, and to their knowledge, pretty much nothing happened. Nothing crazy. I mean, they really didn't notice anything, if anything was happening. And they actually said that, hey, look, there's no apparent damage to any of the locks or the doors or the windows. And they actually also discovered that one of the windows was moving on its own. But it could be explained, basically, that if you hit a certain point in the floor, it would basically act as almost the trigger for it because of how the counterweights was working on the windowsill. So it would, like, fling it up, basically on its own, which is really, it's a cool party trick. Like, I totally want to fuck with people, like, doing that. And just be like, oh, it's George, he's back, that kind of shit. But, yeah, apparently it wasn't really that bad. The claims of the hoof prints in the snow were rejected because the weather records show that it hadn't even snowed in Amityville that day, and there wouldn't be any before then. And also, Lutz admitted that the green slime from the walls was really just kind of him being like, you got me, okay, it wasn't really Slimer.
I wanted to be cool.
He was basically wanting to make it more interesting, right?
Yeah.
And
because you make money off of it if you do that.
And there was money to be made. Like, the initial book alone made a shit ton of money. Like, it was impressive how everybody just globbed on to the story. And they were like, oh, I gotta, like, get in some of this because this is super, super neat.
And the movies and stuff. Like, listen,
I
fully
on
support
top of it.
the 1979? The 1979 version of it because, listen, James Brolin.
We watched that before we did the podcast. We thought it was a really fun time.
Yeah, it was a good movie. Like, they did a good job of how the Lutz family kind of explained their, scenario. I don't know how much of it was actually true, but they did a decent job of it. And it was a good movie, even if you just take it as a fiction standpoint. It was a good movie.
Oh, yeah. And in terms of, like, just entertainment value alone. I mean, like, the giant pig in the window shit, too.
That was pretty
That was fun.
Cool. Yeah.
And the cool thing about the story about the pig, really, is because, and I shit you not, this is probably one of the funniest parts, it was a cat. The giant pig was a cat, and I'm not joking because George called the neighbor's cat, who just happened to be a very portly fellow, pig, for the reason that, it's a fat fucking cat. So the whole time there's supposed to be this demonic
pig in the window. It's the fucking pig cat.
The kid named Jody, by the way. Turns out it was probably just the cat, and its actual name was Jody, and it's just a really fat cat.
So they were like, it's Jody, and they were like,
oh, it must be a demonic spirit
that she's
communicating with.
Pig.
Yeah, and then
things add up a little weird for it to just.
But yeah, no, I didn't know that. That's confirmed because they were like he called the cat pig all the time, and so it's like the coolest part of that story is bullshit.
There go my hopes and dreams, bro.
Right. So
now I look like this for nothing.
God.
I'm
gonna murder you straight up.
That's fine.
Okay.
I accept it. Make a podcast.
So, like, basically at the end of everything, they even got taken to court at some point where it's like, hey, is this narrative really, really true? Or is this, like, mostly bullshit? And they were like, okay, yeah. They were like, basically, the new owners of the house kept getting harassed by a bunch of tourists and stuff. And we're talking about tourists that are people like me. So they're the worst. Because they'd be like, can I see the parts where the ghost, can I see the ectoplasm? I wish to collect it for my ectoplasmic collection. I usually just end up getting it in truck stop bathrooms for some reason.
Ectoplasmed in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
Which used to be a running joke between you and I don't know what happened to that, but I wish.
No, that started on the podcast.
Yeah, it did, and then I made it a thing.
It's pretty great.
That's my
But yeah, so you had like a bunch of fucking nerds like just showing up at the house at all fucking hours of the day and night, and then they were like, "Hey, man,
people who look just like
can we get can we get these people to fuck off? Like seriously?" So the couple actually ended up suing the publisher, and Jay Anson, who was the guy who helped basically go ahead and set everything up with them for like invasion of privacy, so that way, the true story aspects of it would pretty much be removed, so that way they could stop getting all of these annoying ass people over there constantly. And so they received an out of court settlement, but court battles just kept mounting up and mounting up and mounting up. And eventually the judge, completely dismissed Lutz's claims that it was, nonfiction. He was basically like, based on what I've heard, it appears to me a large extent of the book is a work of fiction, relying in large part upon the suggestions of Mr. Weber. And so, with that, basically, a lot of the story, not exactly as awesome as we want it to be. I mean, and that kind of sucks for me personally, because I'm like, oh man, I was in pursuit of learning so much about this. I was like, I hope that, a lot of the stuff is actually really debatable on how real it is or not. But ultimately, it was just kind of a fluke. It was just kind of like, alright, well, you got us. Good job.
And as I've learned more, it kind of seems like the only reason there's a paranormal aspect to it at all is because the Lutz family was like, ooh, spooky, and
granted,
they just wanted it to be entertaining.
Yeah, they wanted it to be a lot more entertaining.
Whatever. And now it's like, well, none of that really happened, so it's like, whatever.
I mean, still, with the whole gruesome murder thing, though.
That still sucks.
But
it's not intense. Paranormal. It's just this. Whatever happened there is
I'm still
weird.
Almost maybe it's just because this is the kind of thing that I like globbing onto, and I'm like, oh man, it'd be so cool if that were real. Oh my god, you guys, a little still to be able to keep it in my collection.
Yeah.
I kind of think that the fact that they left just pretty much all of their shit still inside the house just took off. Fuck this. We're leaving the state.
Listen.
I think that there might be something going on there. I don't know exactly what it is.
I lived in the South, okay? And I have my entire life. If you've never had a fly infestation, listen. When it's summertime or whatever and the flies are bad, imagine, if you will, it's winter time and you have a fly infestation and it gets almost unbearably annoying then. I would want to get out as soon as possible to avoid it at any other time.
Okay.
That's just me. That's the only thing I can think of right now. I don't know.
Yeah. So
I think about flies a lot because they're just the worst. They're the worst.
You think flies are bad? think about bed bugs for like half a second,
I'd
and
rather
you'll be
not.
like,
I don't
no,
want to do that.
it's unparalleled hell on
I'd
Earth.
rather not do that.
So yeah.
Listen, don't
So,
do that to me.
That's what you get. That's what you get for bitching about flies.
Ah!
All right. At the end of it all, there's still like a huge cultural impact of the house to this day, and we got some pretty cool movies. We're definitely gonna go watch the 2019 one. I have a feeling it's gonna be really fun.
Yeah.
And
we have a lot to talk about too. There's so much of it, like we've
lot
been
of-
doing.
a lot of real stuff behind it.
There's
so
a lot of
it's been
we
fun.
don't know,
Yeah.
and that's always what people love to talk about because it's like maybe this happened or maybe this happened, and it's just a
The
whole
piggy in the window. It's a fat fucking cat. It's just Garfield.
It is, and his
John,
fucking
where's my lasagna?
Yeah, that's the red eyes. He's
It's
waiting
the
on his
worst
lasagna.
Garfield fucking impression ever. I can do a lot of good voices. I can't do a good Garfield.
That's tough. I'm
I
sorry.
don't know. I cry a little bit more every day because of it.
Is that what that is?
Although, yeah, although different. We're gonna go with that. That's the official story. No more comments.
Okay.
All right. Although different owners of the house after the Lutzes haven't reported any sightings, some neighbors and some others say strange occurrences still happen around the house to this day. Ooh.
It's New York.
Yeah,
It's just
it's New
weird.
York. There's
a lot of
I
crackhead.
bash New York a lot today. Like, without
They're
even
weird.
meaning to be, like, that harsh. Like, don't worry, New York, I still like you a little bit. But you're also a pretty bad state.
You're on thin ice.
You're on thin fucking ice, capiche.
Yeah,
Alright.
okay, you and your fingers.
Yeah,
You
alright.
and your ravioli hands.
So, with that, I think that pretty much summarizes what we wanted to get into. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I've had a lot of fun though. This has been a good time.
Yeah, I'd definitely say so too.
Yeah.
It's been a pretty
really
good
cool. Yeah.
second episode. It's
gotten-
it's been a fucking while, and I really, really do apologize, but I appreciate anyone who comes in and watches the recording, because, I mean, I've been wanting to run this thing, and hopefully this special guest will be on again. I'm hoping.
Hopefully.
Had a pretty good time.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for people who are watching, and if you guys like this kind of content and the fact that we're going in, we're delving in, getting dirty, doing the research that no one else wants to do, you know.
First of all,
Go
drama queen.
Go ahead and hit the subscribe button.
Do that, though. Yes.
We would definitely appreciate that. And outside of that, we do have a Patreon page. It's in the link in the description below. Already took care of that. So outside of that, I guess this is signing off for Temple of the Cynic podcast. Any last quotations from Maddie here?
Fuck bitches, get money.
Fuck bitches, get money.
That's my advice of the week. I'm gonna do that. That's gonna be a thing. And it's gonna be increasingly worse.
Alrighty. Well, everybody, hail the temple, and we shall see you next week. Bye-bye.